This hangout is on air and is live. Thank you for joining us to OreAni, the end of 2016 winter season part 2. Small group today, just Nick and I. Seeing as Nick is the only other person that's watched most everything.
Woo.
Well, I haven't really watched anything at all, so I'll be asking him a lot of questions today.
I think I'm going to call myself a new name. I'm just going to be known as the Overwatcher or something like that.
So we don't really have too much planned today as in a list. We're just going to be going through the titles that were left over and just giving a little feedback from Nick about if it's good, if it's not, or should we give it a try again? Who knows? Maybe.
I don't see that working out well, but I mean, I'll provide my take on some of these shows, but like, just because I say I kind of liked it, does that mean go out and watch it? Probably not. Like usually, like if I'm stretching to say that it had this one like good aspect about it, and that's it, and that a show does that not make.
Let's go ahead and start with the first title, which I love the character designs, but couldn't get into the show. Oh no, Kanata, no for rhythm.
No for rhythm.
That's the show with the flying
circus.
People. Yay.
Yeah, like this ridiculous show that they have an anti-gravity particle, and the only thing they really seem to do with it is put it into a shoe, and you like get places with these shoes. Like it's not really even in cars or anything. And there's a single sport that like centers around this anti-gravity flying shoe. Not, 12 or anything. I mean, how many sports do we have that just use like a ball as a medium? Yeah, no, we only got one sport with this flying shoe thing. But that really doesn't ruin the show. I thought it was going to be a lot different. So I was wondering how we were going to have like a non-shonen sports show, because it wasn't trying to be like the, number one baseball, number one football, number one biking. This is a fictitious sport. So, and I guess you could make like a really shonen show about that, but that's not really what happened here. And the funny thing is, you bring up character design. I hear people talk about its character design a lot, and it's like, to me, it's just anime. Like, that is the traditional look of a lot of shows. But one thing in particular that did impress me, and I'm sorry I don't have any screen grabs or anything, is the sports jersey of the show is like this Tengu inspired long sleeve thing. And that actually was something that kind of drew me in. Like, oh, that uniform is kind of impressive. Like, I like the uniform in question. The character design, I'm meh. But it was interesting because I didn't know this, but one of our fellow members pointed out that this was a sprite project, which they usually have a high female cast of characters, and it's at core based off a visual novel type thing. So I was wondering, oh, usually those don't really involve like fictitious sports heavily, so how is this one going to pan out? And it kind of took itself seriously, which was impressive. There was a sensei who I guess was a previous athlete for this sport known as flying circus, which I should actually describe again once and for all, that the sport is typically played amongst two players with two opposing players, and each of them having a ground-based observer who will give them feedback about the position and just offer their general advice as to what their next tactic should be. Although players start at what's called the first buoy, there are two ways to score in this game. The first person to tag the buoys sequentially, so you can't just cut off the first one and just start tagging random numbers. There is a sequence to it, gets a point. Now, the second person usually flies off course to try to intercept them on their way to the second one. As long as the players actually touch, like the racing player hits the other one blocks the other one, as long as they're contact, any player at that point can go for the second buoy. So you don't have to, it's not like you lose your ability to score just because you didn't hit the first one. But the although you can hit the other player from any angle, and although I say hit, it's not really like, you know, I punch said player. There seems to be like some other visual effect when you make contact with someone. There's this like field that opens up and it kind of like repels you a little bit. And if you do hit them kind of square in the back, you do score a point. So those are the two viable methods of, you know, scoring points. And what kind of impressed me in this one was the sensei of the series, that who we never really see fly until one point in particular when everyone was like training, came up with this technique that she called the bird cage. And she, I guess, hounded herself on speed to try to make it so that she would get the first buoy, or at least be able to combat people with scoring points. And after she had a point advantage, all she ever tried to do was control the opponent's movements through higher ground. If she positioned herself right above their back to basically score a point, she would make her opponents evade. And she would always kind of sit in an angle that would cut them off from like opting to proceed to the next buoy. While she semi-perfected this technique, she came to a realization that it would break the sport. Like, you know, this is not how the sport's supposed to be played, to try to dominate your opponent's moves, and it would break as a sport. Like, it would fail to continuously catch on, because it would be all about this play that is actually not scoring and just movement controlling. So she kind of retired early from the sport and attempted to steal that move. However, there was at the time a young bystander who noticed what was going on, who saw this bird cage, and you know, years and years later, they refined that technique and they brought it back to the tournaments. So you had the second coming of this technique that this one teacher made and tried to steal forever, but was not able to because, you know, an onlooker caught on. So the last few episodes were catered to how to break this unstoppable technique. And the interesting thing is that the opposition that brought the second coming of Birdcage back, they also used a different type of gravity shoe made by a company that was really new. And the show tried to give this ominous feeling about it. A lot of characters, since they didn't know about it, they were trying to paint a feeling of ominous, almost like something cheating was going on with this shoe, and that actually was not the case. The maker of it, the shoes are built with this feature that controls safety. So like if you were to approach the ground at a breakneck pace, it would activate the gravity field in such a way where it would just like create a repulsing field to stop you from slamming into the ground. It also made flying a lot easier, a lot less sensitive to, I guess, the control field. So like how you had your, I guess, feet positioned or whatever, it just made maneuvering a lot easier. The flyers who were messing with that, they were training in turning off the safety of these shoes to unlock their full potential and speed, but losing all forms of safety and ease of control. So in the final tournament, this is like a huge spoiler, we noticed that not only were we able to kind of break the birdcage, but then the opponents kind of one-upped our protagonist by unlocking that safety thing on their shoe. And with the unlocked potential that the person has been training with for the heck ever, they were able to just lock down the whole game all over again. And instead of winning the tournament, they opted to just toy around with the opponents to draw it into overtime. And instead of just taking the win right then and there, they opted for overtime. So during overtime, they had like a 5-minute break. And in the 5 minutes, one of our protagonist characters said, you know what, I'm going to try to do what they are doing. And they're like, you've only accidentally used that feature once. And unlike their shoes, you can't turn that feature on and off mid-flight. If we turn it off now, there's no telling what it's going to happen when you're flying up there. And knowing full well she kind of goes into this final match with no training, and is able to, although she has a rough start, able to comprehend how she needs to, the poise needed to control the raw power of the unsafety choose. And it just made for a really good final episode, in my opinion. And a lot of the worries of the teacher kind of went away, because she saw, like, instead of the sport in and of itself dying because of the birdcage thing, she thinks, or the whole premise of the final episode is, this sport was just born again, because now all players are going to turn the safeties off and play this thing at the higher speed with, the better visuals. It was almost like the second revival of this thing that never died. So I just kind of had respect for a show that vested itself in that much into this kind of story, instead of just using, like, sport tactics that already existed. It was just interesting to see play out.
Huh. So it really was all about that sport, nothing else, or?
Yeah, like it wasn't about like I'm trying to remember one of their most recent things that I know I watched, and that was that election chocolate thing. And I can't remember if, like, relationships were supposed to be a big thing, because a lot of times whenever you have a dating sim like game, you usually have the oblivious protagonist and, like, everyone trying to hit on him. And that is not the case here. And I do you remember Chocolate at all? The Elections in Chocolate show?
Yeah.
Did they do the same thing there, where it wasn't about everybody trying to hit on him? It was just like they were seriously going on whatever the point of the story was?
No, they all had some kind of feeling for him. I mean, one girl even writes like this confession thing. I can't remember. And he accidentally reads it before he goes up to the election. Of course, you have the teacher that kind of seems to have something with him, where he's always with her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
They're just all these little things that were happening. I remember.
Okay, like, I can't recall fully, but, like, yeah, in this series you had the kind of the center protagonist was shared amongst two people. I can't remember the guy's name, like the only sole male protagonist of this whole series, but the girl name, Asuka Kurahashina, I believe, had this happy-go-lucky attitude about her, and it was solely invested in learning the sport more. Like, even as other people's opinions of the sport, like, especially with the second coming of the whole birdcage move thing, a lot of the serious players were starting to abandon the sport because they'd lost their enjoyment with it. And it's like, she was like, at the time, it seemed like she was just oblivious as to, oh, that's a completely fine way for this sport to be played. I had no idea. Because, like, the whole thing was new to her anyway. She didn't even acknowledge that everyone was actually kind of dismayed by this tactic, because it kind of broke the game. She just had more excitement in that. So it was all more about her attitude towards the sport, more so than it was who likes who. So
what happened with that boy? It seemed like he was hiding something, like he didn't want to play.
I think it was, I think him, much like the teacher, he was they didn't touch on it a whole lot, but he was a decent, like, elementary kid player. He had his own graph shoot things that, like, had a signed inscription from somebody on them. I didn't pause to read it or anything. He had skills in it, but I think when he witnessed maybe, like, the teacher unleashed that birdcage move, I think he just got burnt out by the sport and just kind of gave up on it. So it wasn't like he had trauma. He didn't have some physical anomaly that inhibited him from continuing, like, a career or pursuing a career in the sport. I think he just kind of got burned out on it and just didn't want to fly the sport anymore. And that's all that I'm left to kind of draw a conclusion from.
All right. Shall we head to the next title then?
Sure.
What I got next is Dimension W. The power of the coils, right?
Yeah. Dimension W was kind of weird, because to me it had, like, a lot of potential in its first two episodes. And then, like, the rest of the series kind of played out a lot differently. You're introduced to the whole universe of Dimension W, which we've talked about in one of the things. We've tapped into the fourth dimension, and we draw a huge power from it. We have Wi-Fi power in these things called coils, and I guess that is like free. Like aside from buying the cost of the coil, you don't have to like have like a power bill from said power company. They really didn't get into the nitty-gritties of that, but they didn't really have to. We witnessed that our main protagonist, I'm blanking on his name. Gosh darn it.
Was it Ryoma or something like that?
I don't think so.
I don't know.
I was gonna pull it up while I had a chance.
I'll just say the name that came to my mind.
No, Ryoma sounds like it's something from something else. Yeah, Mabuchi Kyoma. You were close.
Oh,
Kyoma.
I remember the Ma or something.
He apparently was like jaded by the coils. Like he acknowledged a hidden danger that most of society was oblivious to due to cover-ups. He was a professional coil recovery agent who, although coils were produced by this new Tesla company, as we all know, technology is something that can be easily mimicked by other parties. Another country takes apart the technology and attempts to recreate it. You have the surgence of illegal coils that weren't as safe as the still potentially unsafe official ones. If you drew too much out of the coil, it would glow red and kind of tear into Dimension W. And how they handled that, to me, could have been a lot better. In the second episode, you're introduced to this character known as Loser, who uses coils, and he's after these super powerful beta coils that don't operate like the normal run-of-the-mill consumerist one. These were the ones that kind of tapped into Dimension W on their own and didn't rely on these things called towers to kind of do it for them. And using the power of those, he had some goal that he needed to achieve because he was also jaded by the coils somehow through this backstory that was introduced later. But like after that, it kind of introduced this quirky villain who used coils in like a weird way. And that kind of drew my interest to the show. But immediately after that, we are kind of whisked away to this like cabin in the woods thing where this murder mystery thing is going down. And then we kind of learn a little bit more about what actually the coils are powered off of. And that doesn't sit super well with me, but it is a series in and of itself. So the coils, they find this author who writes murder mysteries. And we find out that, spoilers ahead here, the coils, when they are powered off probable futures, like alternate realities, so to speak, but not, this scary fourth dimension with like aliens in it. It's whatever potential futures there could be. The potential in the future is what they are drawing energy from. It's this weird concept, I know. But usually when a coil goes bad, it like creates fragmental copies of whatever was nearby in its nearby vicinity. So that's kind of like the branching futures, I guess. But sometimes when they go bad, they create like a pocket dimension where people or personalities or consciousnesses are trapped in this similar but different future. So after they resolve that, we are finally met to the whole end of Dimension W is we have to go to this like Easter Island thing that was the big accident happened on, that our main protagonist Kyoma was jaded by. And it, when he was a high schooler, he met this one girl who was into ancient cameras, kind of like what we have nowadays, because we're not in the future with Wi-Fi coils. He, develops a relationship with her, but then she has some ailment that is a terminal illness of sorts. So they go. he becomes an agent for this organization that deals with the coils, I guess. I forgot what that like super secret army thing was supposed to be about. And he was making money to pay for this operation to save her. The operation was supposed to be they were going to, like, almost like in a Ghost in the Shell thing, transplant her head, her brain, her whatever, onto a new android body. During the surgery, something went wrong, and the coil like went berserk, and she lost her life that day instead of having it prolonged by the android body or played out to the terminal illness. We actually find out that was intentional, because although the coils look into the future, they are not perfect. They cannot calculate for the human element. The creator of the coil made this Genesis coil, he called it, that could actually understand humanity. And this is where the series gets really weird, because the coil itself has to be able to understand people, to mess with people. There was another scientific organization who was trying to experiment with teleportation, and while they can teleport inanimate things, it could never master life. If you try to move something that is biologically alive, it would not be able to arrive to its destination. But anything that is, like a run-of-the-mill item like this permanent marker here, would be able to be teleported. So with the Genesis coil that was made, we can now teleport humanity, but also kind of control, not humanity, but control the process of teleportation in and of itself. We met this crazy villain who, when he teleports people, he would mess with their biology, because that's what the coil would allow him to do. So he could reconfigure them, he could include things into their genetic makeup, he can take things away from their genetic makeup, he could, using this teleportation process on humanity, you could kind of control. It was kind of a god coil, and I think it was called that. But the creator was somehow able to steal it away, and that's why illegal coils were being made. The scientist in question was trying to recreate the Genesis coil that could allow him to mess with what he needed to mess with again, because he ended up trapped in the pocket dimension, and in order to get back, he needed to be able to teleport himself, which he couldn't do without a coil of that level. So it was just like all of this weird stuff based on probabilistic futures and all this stuff going wrong. And like when all is said and done, we are met with the scene at the very end of Kyoma resuming his illegal coil lifestyle. Like he is once again apprehending the weird villainous people who use these coils to make this like gimmicky suit thing that make him a super gimmicky villain. And it's like we never got to witness that side of the series, and I think it would have been a stronger series if we could see that, instead of just being thrown into the whole fourth dimension being, alternate realities. So it was just kind of weird. Oh, and I did also forget to mention that the robot who was in the series, the Mira, no, what was her name? Was it Mira? Yeah, it was Mira. She was actually intended to be the robot body of the wife character that Kyoma was saving, but with the failure of that operation, she was made into just be, the super advanced robot that she is. So it was kind of weird, because we actually find out that although she had the green hair and she was different, her personality was different, she had the exact same body as the person who was the sweetheart of the main protagonist, Kyoma. So
I see.
Yeah, like it was just so weird, and I wish that the series could have spent more time apprehending the weird gimmicky villains who used the coils, instead of just jumping straight into the weird thing about like futures and controlling human biology that it did. But that's kind of where it went to.
So how many numbered coils did they get?
The loser guy he needed to obtain 5 of them in order to mess with like warping technologies, not human warping, but he was only trying to ever obtain 5. Hyoma, I think he might have maybe got 1, but like I said, it seemed like they were skipping through a lot of content. I'm not sure if the manga was written that way and they carried on exactly as the manga was written, but to me it just feels like they kind of skipped to the juicy core parts of the story, and a lot of the characterization of the world, of the people in it, of what you could do with coils was kind of ignored to bring about the core essence of the story. Like it almost should have been dragged on a little bit longer with maybe like another core just to get all that in there and approach this concept a little more slowly than the kind of breakneck speed that it had to.
Maybe they'll do it a second season and explain it.
I doubt it. Like,
or just
it
make
seems
it even
pretty
more
over.
confusing.
Or like the second season will be what I hope the first season was. Like, now that we've messed with that, we're just messing with the world of coils again, and how you can utilize these things. Because one thing that I loved in particular about the second episode was you had this team. It was the loser guy, that was his villain name. He was working with someone who was standing off scene, and the way they kind of controlled their flow of information was by making these robotic like pigeons that had coils installed in them, but they were like actually flying birds that would randomly fly in the sky. And our advanced robot protagonist Mira was able to kind of like, I guess, just notice these birds were acting odd in the sky and figure out that that's how they were getting around some limitation imposed by jamming. And it was like, holy crap, like, you know, you have these robotic birds that are flying in the sky that are like, you know, essentially like spy satellite drones just on the ground. It had like a lot of feasible technology that I feel like they vested a lot of thought into that, and we just didn't get to see it fleshed out. Like, here is how you can use electricity and advanced robotics to do almost like Ghost in the Shell level stuff, and all that stuff just felt like it was just kind of glanced by. And I feel the series might have it more fleshed out, but I'm not sure because I never read the original material or anything.
I see. So would you recommend this to anyone, or?
Yeah, you know, like early off in the series, I really enjoyed it, and I still like the series on the whole. I would recommend it to people, but I can also say that if it's just not working out, like if it's not to your taste, then go ahead and drop it. But I mean, the first 2 episodes were great, and the final episode goes a little into what I hope the whole thing could have been like if it was at least 2 core. But I mean, I'd say it's kind of worth checking out. It had a lot of decent art in it. Like, even the whole murder mystery thing was kind of weird, but it had a sense of style to itself that I think a lot of people could appreciate if you weren't into shows that just had to make sense and have to be super practical. If you like anime for pandering into unrealistic examples of what could be possible in like a nearby future if certain things worked out certain ways, then I'd say it's worth checking into.
Isn't that why we watch anime?
Well, lots of people watch anime for many different reasons.
Yeah. Well, I did notice it had some pretty cool action scenes and stuff, so if you're into some of that stuff, you might be interested in it. Well, let's go ahead and go to the next title. Oops, not that one. You didn't watch Precure, did you?
No.
Stride. Prince of Stride. Alternative. Oh, I can't believe you watched this.
It was actually pretty decent. Like, it was not horrible, in my opinion. Again, kind of based on a much more realistic sport that I think was fictitious. I don't actually know if like Stride exists in some small part of Japan, and I'm not like over there to know about it. It was kind of like a mashup of relay racing with parkour. And it was like super impractical too at the same time, because like everyone would have like a GPS marker on them, and you would have this person called a relationer who would monitor the progress of everyone, and queue up the next person to run and do the tag team switch to, you know, have the next part of the relay race be carried out. Who did this one? Like, who produced this one?
No idea.
It's bad that I'm looking it up now, but I can Google stuff quickly. That's what it's for.
Google.
I think it was Madhouse just because of the coloring on it. Like, I want to say that's the studio, but I'm not 100% sure. Producers, Media Factory, and Studio Madhouse. Absolutely. All right. Madhouse completely picks up with their odd use of colors here again. So, you know, you would get much of that out of the story. You have these semi-quirky characters who are motivated by different things to play this sport, and I just got to say that, like, the way they queued up the running, like, they used a lot of the same sound effects. Like, it was always, like, the same, like, sneaker squeaking whenever, like, someone was picking up speed and crap like that. But, it was just kind of the way they blended the action with sounds with a lot of stuff just worked, in my opinion. Much so where it wasn't to the level of like trying to entice the shoujo as a Free was. It pandered into that realm just a tiny little bit, but it was much more toned down than Free. But I gotta say, I think I enjoyed it more so than watching Free, albeit maybe because it didn't try to be like Free, and it was also at heart a sports show about being kind of a sports show, where although Free was invested in a little bit in swimming, that was kind of not its main goal, I guess. Like, it wasn't the Shonen series, because that one, you know, had the muscly men swimmers who had, you know, that look of being into each other, because that would attract the Fujoshi, and that's what that whole thing was pandering into. And Stride doesn't try to do that at all, but it can still be there for people who do find popularity with, or who do find vested interest in it. They can still kind of carry on the same way with the characters, but it was a lot more mild in that sense.
So aren't they called Bishonen?
Yeah, like the pretty boys. Bishonen. And, you know, I can't really identify them myself because I don't try to analyze the... Oh, is that a pretty boy? I don't know. It's just not what I try to identify, but...
All you have to do is ask, does he look better than me? If so, he's a pretty boy.
Oh, yeah? I'll have to remember that. Tank. Anyway, so yeah, it was actually kind of really odd, or not odd. The Stride anime also featured a tournament, which is very normal for sports shows. Tournaments kind of are the plot focus of that. The tournament in Stride was known as End of Summer, and it is the goal of our three core characters here. We had the Yagami Riku, Fujiwara Takeru, and the girl, I'm not sure, because she's not apparently important enough to make it into the initial list. Apparently, our main character, or one of the main core characters, had two voice actors for some reason. I don't know why, it's just listed that way. It looks odd to me. So it was kind of a little bit odd. The main character, the black-haired one, the Fujiwara Takeru, I believe, he was the Megane character who, you know, he honed his diet to be perfect. He always wanted to try to perfect his form to achieve top speed. He was the analytical character of the series. And also the only one that is revealed in the later, like, 10th episode onward, to remember that he had a childhood encounter with the other two characters who are his first years to the series as well. You know, they are their first year members who joined the club. They as kids, were impressed by the sport and swore that they would make it to this high school to win this big tournament. Yeah, he was the only one to remember that, and he doesn't really tell them until they remembered for themselves in like the 10th episode onward. The other two just kind of happenstancely arrived at the school, forgetting their childhood promise, but remembering it in time for like the final battle of this tournament, which I think the semifinals was like the craziest to me because the semifinals took place in like this Disneyland like theme park, and I just, this series had like always a form of impracticality to me. Like in the first episode, the team is revived. It's like our school is doing Scride again, and the student body reacts to that message being announced on the intercom. They scramble together to build a course for these runners to run, and you have pools of observers being built up, and it's like that is a little bit overkill for any sport, even just on its premise of reviving. It's like, how popular is this sport if the school was like giving it up? If it was a dead sport there, how is everyone enjoying it this much? You truly have no runners. But they always try to paint a level of impracticality to things. So a lot of the later relay race runs would be, normally held in cityscape and roadways and just general like urban courses. The semifinal match was held in like a Disneyland park, and you had characters literally running on like there was this like mine train ride, and the characters like running through the track of like the mine train. Obviously, the park, I guess, was not running that day. The coaster was not present, but it was just kind of weird. It's like, even for a sport, could I imagine like any theme park shutting down to momentarily have this like tournament hosted on the premise of like one of their coaster tracks that normally they have fenced off with warnings of high voltage everywhere. It's like, I guess I was just like impressed by the impracticality of the courses, and that was another kind of draw to the series. Of you have these like super advanced centers that just kind of hone the athlete's physique, finesse, and I don't know. There seems to be like a crazy amount of money in this sport that should just be like as well liked as like it surpassed the popularity of like Olympian Games, and I was like, holy crap, like, that's impressive.
A quick question.
Yeah.
So I didn't watch any of this show except for probably 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
First episode,
mm-hmm.
And you seem to be talking about the guys and everything, but what was with that girl at the beginning? Was she a main part?
She's the main character. She was one of the first years that I said were the three core members of the cast here. Her name was.
So she was actually a runner?
No, she was the relationer. She was Sakurai Nana, I believe. Yeah, that looks like her and her name. So she donned like the Bluetooth headset and the tablet and would monitor her team's position alongside the enemies. And her job was, when the tag partner was like getting ready, like they just kind of had to wait for their particular course to run, because it's not like on the big giant oval field that most relay races are held. This thing had a pathway that was through urban landscape. She would tell the next runner to get ready, because the next runner would have to run to pick up speed to make it to the tag zone to tag the previous member, so that he can be the next member of the relay race. So like she had to tell him, okay, that guy's approaching now, 3, 2, 1, start running.
She is the coordinator.
Mm-hmm. Although that whole position was just referred to as the relationer.
The relationer.
Like, yeah, it kind of had this weird name about it. She was like the team's relationer, and she was one of the 3 childhood, not friends, because they like momentarily met just for the tournament, but had that childhood impression with the sport that we will grow up to play this sport. We will go to this high school, and we will join a team that will win this tournament that we were impressed by. So, but she didn't remember that until like the 10th episode, of course, nor did one of the other involved. And it was kind of funny because they had this moment of looking at the other guy. And they're like, wait, if you remembered all this time, why didn't you tell us? And, you know, he's like the analytical character was like, it wasn't important. So
I see.
I guess I did like the music of it and the concept. Like, I think they did the blending of the sport in with the plot pretty well. Like, you know, you have to progress the characters. You have to not progress the characters with their mentalities or anything, but we have to fill in the time that we're not running with general school life and other shenanigans. And I think they blended the two rather well. Like, it was one of their more impressive, not because I don't know, their most notable recent works, in my opinion, were like No Game, No Life, which, you know, this is not No Game, No Life. No Game, No Life, like, just had this absurd style to it that was really impressive. And one of their more recent projects, which was that Hana Yamata thing, which kind of fell apart, that was not a good blending of school. It was more school life and other shenanigans than it was sport, and that really kind of messed with people, a lot of people. But I was like, they kind of found a perfect mix for this style of shonen-y show that it's not as shonen as your normal sports anime, like, because it's like I said, it's half of what Free tried to be, but the other half, it's like half Free mixed with a half shonen sports show. So I think they did the blending of those two rather well. But, like, you know, it was enjoyable enough for me. So it was something that I would kind of look forward to week instead of, oh, I have to like see what this show is doing now and its unique mix of things.
All right. Let's go ahead and go to the next title then. Bum, bum, bum. This was actually short.
It is a short.
Maho Shoujo Nante. The rest is covered up. Moi desu kara? I can't read that. It's too small on my screen.
Weren't you trying to watch this one? How far did you get with that?
I actually watched all of it. I forgot to mark it. It's the magical schoolgirl.
Yeah,
the thing about it, actually, Drew, if you haven't looked at my profile,
I did. I remember that image. I just didn't know if you finished the series or not. You sometimes have issues with that.
So this, I guess I'll start with this show because it's one of the few I've seen. It being a short, it was really quick. I watched it all in one run, and it was pretty fast. And the strange thing is, it's like this girl ends up becoming a magical girl, meeting this weird creature in the trash. And I think it was kind of almost like, I can't remember how she got into it or how she got roped into it. It was more or less like, oh yeah, I can make you a magical girl. You want to see? Sure, okay. Yeah, I'm a magical girl. No, now you're stuck with it. And so she's like, what the hell? And she's kind of upset because of her costume, I guess you could say.
Yeah. The costumes in this series, not to cut you off here or anything, but they kind of deviate from the typical, like, frilly dress thing. They kind of were like uniforms in and of themselves. Like hers in particular was a swimsuit. But then we meet another one or two, I believe, later. Do you remember the second ones?
Yeah, the Santa Claus suit and everything. So it was kind of weird, but she hated that suit, and that's why she didn't want to be a magical girl. She wanted to. She was too embarrassed. But the strange thing about it was, like, you find out that even though there's these beings that can make people into magical girls, there's no reason for magical girls.
Yeah,
no
like
danger. That's
kind of why I wanted to talk about this series, because it kind of took place after the opposition has been fought. They're like, you know, the thing that we were supposed to be fighting is no more. So she's like, well, why are we still around? And he was like, well, just 'cause. So, like, she transforms. She doesn't like her uniform. She has the powers of a magical girl, but nothing to fight. So, instead of trying to be a traditional take of that magical girl series, we were met with a series that instead kind of focused in, well, what does one do in their off time? Like, if they were just allowed to mess with the genre in and of itself, like I'm messing with my powers, but why? I never really have to use them, but what can I do with them? And one of the funnier aspects of this show was, since she didn't like the uniform so much, she had that friend that had the big crush on her, right? Or something.
Yep, her friend.
Yeah, I think she was the what was she?
Her childhood friend, the glasses girl, Megane girl.
Yeah, I was just gonna pull up her name because I need it. We are doing this one rather late, in my opinion. There was a couple weeks that a lot of people were really gone, so this is too delayed for me to remember much. I think her name was Shinogi Mafuyu. Or no, that was the Santa Claus one. Why is she not like pictured here? Oh well.
I don't know, but you find out that the bean can't cancel the contract, but it'll automatically cancel itself at the age of 16 because she's no longer considered a girl or something like that.
Something.
She's now a young adult or something. Who knows, right? So she just has to wait for it to disappear. But I love the fact that how they treated the guy, the mascot.
The Miton?
Yeah. So, whenever they're talking, oh, this is me, this is the person that made me magical girl and stuff. Oh, yeah, this is my partner. We're not partners. What are you talking about? And whenever he said something, the other girl, that the best friend, would always get on him. It's like, what the hell do you think you're saying? But by the end, it kind of seemed that they got a little close, which wasn't really too much. It was just slightly. But
I guess she's Chia Sakagami, the friend.
Yeah, but it's a pretty laid back show because, like, I mean, even the ending was like,
oh my goodness, the mother
wow,
character.
it ended.
Well, I love like the mom's reaction to her being like a magical girl.
She spies on her from the window.
But yeah, so like for a while there, since she hated her uniform so much, they like spent a lot of episodes wondering how to get around the. She's like, "Can you change it?" Well, no, but well, how about you just like transform and then don normal clothing, or like stay transformed forever, or whatever. Like they were trying to come up with like counters just to the uniform in question. So like, and you did see some other characters who would transform here and there. I think there might have only been one other who wasn't in the Santa Claus garb. There was that blonde person who I don't remember if she had a floaty thing.
She didn't have. She had the ability because she could see it, but she wasn't one.
Okay, that's right. Because there was only the two mascot characters in here, so there was only the two transform people.
But it's kind of funny because this is another one of those shows where there's no parent figures around for most of the thing, but it's not because they're dead or just. It actually starts off with the father kind of like, "Yay, I love to work. Time to leave in the first train and then get home by the last train." And he was so enthusiastic about it, but every time you see him, he's all like, he looked like, "Oh my God, why do I work at all?"
So I think this was a newer studio who did this one. It's it looks like their name, since I'm looking it up right here, is Pine Jam. And just following their hyperlink yields that this is their only work. Is that true or not? I'm not 100% sure, but so this could be like a premiering studio's work, and it was interesting. That the English translation of this thing is, "I've had enough of being a magical girl," or at least that's how we're going to sell it in English if it comes over, because I think no, Funimation doesn't have their name in it, so I don't know if anyone brings it over. It'd probably have to be Sentai. But yeah, it was just kind of interesting to watch. It was just, it wasn't like a deconstructing of the series or anything. It was just, it was its own world, and it was a short, which made it probably a lot better. instead of having like a full 22-minute episode per week of these shenanigans. I think they had a pretty good mashup there of concept to, you know, time, medium, and other
What
stuff.
was it? This was like the under 10-minute one, right? Shorts.
I believe so. I think each episode had a running time of 4 minutes per episode, so 4 times 12 is the total length of the whole season.
Because that's like different types of shorts. There's like the 5 minutes, the 10 minutes, and 15 minutes.
Yeah, I know. But like 4 or 5 is like a really common one now. You will deviate from that from time to time, but I almost wonder if like premiering studios are going to opt for doing shorts until they get their name out there. Like, is short the venue of choice? And instead of doing a 22-minute thing that you have to like work so hard to produce each week to get out in time, is like, you know, shorts for studios the way of the future if you're just trying to start up and seeing if you can, you know, be a studio if you are successful enough.
Well, if you have free time and you like magical girl shows, give this a try.
Yeah, it's a comedy at heart, so
Yeah.
It's not like a make you bust your gut laughing kind of comedy, but it was just kind of interesting to see because I don't come across a lot of shows that do stuff like this one. So
Let's go to the next title. One of my favorite shorts, actually. OG Santo Marshmallow.
Mm-hmm.
Great show, great show. Reminded me of a lot of, like, I think we mentioned it earlier, kind of like one of the characters from Service and Servant and Service or something. But I don't know how to explain this show. It followed this guy that just really loved marshmallows.
Hige-san.
Hige, yeah. Just this office worker that just really loved marshmallows, and this girl that really liked him, but liked to toy with him with marshmallows. And there was a lot of awkward moments, I would say, that she would try to put him in, but he wouldn't understand it, or he kind of was oblivious to it.
Mm-hmm.
Which was kind of funny in its own little way. But it got really weird because then they introduced her little brother, and things just got really strange there. It was pretty funny. But I believe this was also short as well. Like it was only 10 or something or episodes.
Yeah, like this is another example of like it's done by a studio. I think they're going by the name Creators Impact, and I'm not sure if that's supposed to be like a mashup of studios or not, but they've only put out shorts. Like they've made this Marshmallow, they made that military one from a while ago with like the chibi little military girls. Did you watch that one?
I saw a few of it. Like, what are they? They're trying to protect this one boy.
Yeah, yep, that's it exactly.
Destroying their house.
Mm-hmm. And they worked with Trigger on Hackadoll, and they also did another one that I've watched called Danchi Guy, about like this family. Yeah. So like this is another kind of like a startup studio that seemed to be doing mostly shorts. Will they ever break out of shorts and do a full-on series? I'm not sure. But comedy seems to be their thing, so like they focus on a similar blend of comedy that is present in like a lot of their shows. So, but yeah, it was fun enough to watch. The thing that kind of peeved me off just about it was like the inconsistency in the ending of this series, because like sometimes you would have like, here's a ridiculous way to cook with marshmallows, and then like sometimes you wouldn't, and then they kind of brought it back, but instead of cooking, it was like, let's have this guy try to eat marshmallows in the remaining time, like previous stuff that we've cooked.
He was Higa's voice actor.
Yeah, yeah, they were the voice actors for the whole thing, but it was just like, It kind of messes with me when like a show has that little thing at the end, and then like they're really inconsistent with it. Because the one other time I remember that happening was, I think it was for a short or a full on series. It was about the guy who is like trying to make his voice actor go pro or something, like not voice actor, an idol. And at the end of it, they would kind of do like otaku terms, like they had to talk about like somebody who just likes all idols equally. He'll show up just because there's an event there, and just explain other terminologies. So, you know, people who only watch from their computer and never go to the actual event. So like, I was looking forward to like hearing all about that and learning about that kind of like idol-centric lifestyle, like just for people who support them. And like, that was the only 2 tidbits we ever got.
Yeah,
and they were like concentrated.
Episode, right?
Yeah. Well, no, one was in the first. I think another one was in the second, or some random other episode. But it's like, if you guys do something like that, like try to do it every episode. But yeah, I mean, I did like the Marshmallow series. It followed Hige and his like unbelievable admiration of the food that is marshmallow, like to the point where he would be.
He's called the fairy of the marshmallow.
Yeah, the people who work at the producing factory just know him as the fairy, and they kind of want to like prolong his existence as such, like not even consider him human, just that like because he is the fairy, he needs to do stuff like this or whatever.
Actually, now that I mentioned it, I don't know why I forgot about it. It was kind of forgettable, I guess, in a way, but there was a love rival that did appear.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was another girl that ended up trying to get Higa's affection.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you learned the truth about her, it was like, what the?
Yeah, that was kind of funny.
Oh man, it messed with me. I was like, God.
And you kind of had like the brother who of the Wakabayashi,
Yeah,
the main kind of like interest in this person, who was kind of like always like doing the wrong thing. Like his sister was always getting mad at him because although he thought sometimes he was helping, or just being generally overbearing.
Yeah, she prepares this whole dinner and everything, tricks Higa to coming over, and the brother like, oh, here you go, bye. Turns him away.
Well, she's like busy doing this stuff. Here's that thing you wanted. See ya.
Oh, it was hilarious when I saw that. I was like, oh, snap. Yeah, Marshmallow, pretty fun. Check it out. Like I said, it's one of those 5-minute shorts as well. Really easy to get through, really fast. And the thing I like about these shorts is they're not too fast-paced for how short they are.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's this one short that I hated just because of how fast-paced it was. What's that? Take You short?
No, TQ, God.
There was just blah, 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 and then it's done. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah, TQ is like this overly ranty thing. Like I don't know how they made like 7 iterations of TQ. I would have thought like the first whatever like one would have failed, but they keep making more of it. And I watch it just because I've been watching it all this time, and it's pretty quick to get by. But it's like, to me, I wonder how that thing still thought. Like how does the studio still produce it? Are they just going to produce it because that's what they want to do, or are people actually buying it? What is its popularity ranking? I think I might go look that up.
Well, that's Marshmallow. We'll get to the next short now, which I don't know how you watched it, but
dude, Take You actually splits it up per season, and they have independent rankings per each season.
Secco Boys is your thing, right?
Yeah, it's the one I wanted to talk about.
Just make it gold. Da-da-da-da.
Gold. So why do you think it's horrible? Just out of curiosity. I'm not going to say it's awesome, but I just want to know, like, what was your conception to make it kind of horrible?
I don't know. I don't know. This the concept of statues talking and becoming idols. I think it was dumb.
Well, the funny thing is, yes, they would become idols, but they never really do like a solid performance. Like you kind of see the first episode play that way, but most of the rest of the episodes play out to be like being an idol, like what do you do behind the scenes? Especially as eccentric as these characters were, they were just like actual like busts of famous Greek people. Like you had the Saint George guy, and Hermes and Mars and like the Medici, which I don't know if that one's Italian or not, but I don't know if I don't know my history with these statues, but so at its heart, this is another short that is a comedy, and I think I really liked it because you find out that our protagonist, our manager character, her name is not listed on the initial screen. Son of a gun, click the link. Can't remember. Ishimoto Miki, but she mostly goes by Ishimoto in the whole series. I don't remember anyone calling her name of Miki. Anyway, she has attended college and got a degree in the various fields of arts, but all throughout junior high and high school, while trying to pursue art, they only ever had her work with plaster statues. And she's now finally graduated from college, has her degree, and she's going out into the workforce, and she wants to use her degree to be a manager for a group of idols. And when she meets her idols, they're a bunch of like talking plaster statues that everyone who works with them kind of has a high risk of back injuries, so that usually ends their run as a manager, as they are mostly in charge of transporting these talking idolistic statues from venue to venue. But you really it really tries to bring a personality out in each of the statues, and that's not necessarily what I was impressed with. I think I was just kind of hooked by the whole I recognized the comedy in it, with her wanting to get away from statues, her ending up working with statues, and then like the relationships that they form with other idols as well. Like there was another super popular idol who's just like the Moe character. Mira was her name, I believe they all called her, and like one of the statues has like a crush on her, so like he wants her number and stuff like that. And I mean, it just had a bunch of various gags in it. So I just wanted to really break the fact that, yes, they are kind of an idol group who are supposed to like sing songs for their popularity, but they aren't like the only popular statues. The series also had other like a slapstick comedy duo that inspired these guys to become the singing statue idols that they were. So you're mostly watching them get brought place to place and just listening to the banter between them all and just watching situations unfold than you are watching them performing. Performances are kept to a very minimum. I think there might be 3 maybe in the whole series. I think maybe just 2 or 1. So I guess I just wanted to bring it up because a lot of people checking out I thought the same thing. I thought it was really unreasonable that they did this. So that kind of made me want to watch it more. Like how are you going to sell the series? Like how is this going to work out well for you? And they didn't really show them being popular. They just showed them behind the scenes. So which kind of worked a lot better for the comedy that it was trying to be.
Okay. Well, that's all the titles you wanted to talk about. Let's go ahead and just cover a few that no one mentioned. Maybe like, what's this? Bahamut? Saijuku Muhai no Bahamut?
Uh-huh.
Which is like your typical show for every single season. Boy meets the girl, the girls want him, he fights, defeats enemies, start the next girl.
Yeah, like it, just by watching it kind of really reminded me of Infinite Stratos, not with like the dense protagonist, but they had these like robotic looking suits that I guess were supposed to be powered by ancient dragons or something. Like they literally referred to the Infinite Stratos-like robotic oversuit as a drag ride, which sounds like really hilarious in English, because it just does. But it, it follows like a rather undefeated prince who, the thing that really, aside from the characterization and just the sheer shenanigans of the harem-esque element of this series that I usually just don't like anyway. Like there's something that has to be original in the anime for me to kind of like any semblance of harem. Like it just can't be like another Infinite Stratos harem. Kind of like the Date Alive was kind of cool because although it had that harem thing, it had that whole like choice tie-in. Like you had that spacecraft where people debated like answers and topics and like tried to help him, carry on a date.
Urabe.
Yeah,
it's a different show.
like Data Life was kind of cool because it had that gimmick going for it. But like this show has no such gimmick. It tries to blend fighting with harem, much like Infinite Stratos did, and we follow a protagonist who has this like fabled black drag ride that he tries not to pull out too often. Its name is Bahamut. He
I thought
instead
they revealed that too soon.
Huh?
I felt they revealed that too soon.
I think it was all right, like personally. But he is also really proficient in using like the generic run-of-the-mill model. Like his combat is sharp enough to where he can still win against people using the souped-up drag rides that he tries to not use for, I guess, the stigma behind it or something. But the thing that I didn't like most about the series, aside from a lot of the elements that didn't really make a whole lot of sense, because like you have these ancient artifacts that are like scattered in places, and they didn't really explain a lot of that anywhere near well enough, in my opinion. Not to any level that I'd be happy with, at least. But then like he is like a former prince of this kingdom that was defeated, but then like there was a kingdom that like was short-lived before his. And now there's a new kingdom, which he met, like, I guess the princess of, right? Like, that's what that girl's supposed to be, yes?
Yes.
She's supposed to, like, lead it. And, like, she was on the verge of losing her kingdom that she only had for, like, a year or two. So it's, like, the whole, like, politics of this land seem in high turmoil. And I just couldn't. I didn't want to try to keep track of like all the various generations that we had of kingdoms in like what seemed like a short 10 years. I mean, I wasn't trying to keep track of much from the series anyway, but I got so far into it that I just kind of had to finish watching it and be able to analyze it for what it is. And in the end, I just don't really enjoy it too much myself. Like, I would not recommend this to a whole lot of people.
Yeah, the only other thing that was added was just that because he was a prince of the previous kingdom and they were defeated, to help pay back for something or another, he and his sister are like free labor or something like that. Whenever they need something done, they just have to ask them and they have to do it.
And that really wasn't painted out in the series. Did you get that like from the manga or something?
Yeah, no, they mentioned it quite a few times. That's why even when he was in the school, he still had to do things for the other people.
Yeah, I know, but like, I don't know. I just didn't feel like that was a big focal point of the show. Like they didn't capitalize on that a whole lot.
Yeah, but it did surprise me because I honestly wasn't expecting a harem at the beginning. I thought it was just going to be about him, the princess, and you trying to learn how the kingdom was destroyed. But then, like I said, almost all of that was just finished like in the first 2 or 3 episodes, and then next girl. And then the next girl.
Yeah, I don't know. Convoluted isn't a name for the series, but like, it really didn't try to make a whole lot of coherent sense at the same time. So, like, I guess they were just. I don't know how they adapted the story, if it existed as a manga or light novel. I never keep track of any of that stuff, but. It looked like they were pulling their content from something. I didn't get the sense that it was really original. Do you know? Yeah, it was based off a light novel. I see it right here. Yeah, it didn't really feel to me like they were picking out parts of the source material to do instead of like following true to itself, but you know, without knowing how the light novel was written, I couldn't tell you. So
Yeah, I don't know, but it definitely seems like one of those shows that's going to get a second season. There's still stuff that's going on at the end. But let's go ahead and go to the next title, which a lot of people are disappointed with it. I don't know if I'm disappointed yet. I still want to watch it and I still want to like it, but you kind of said it was a disappointment.
Me?
Luck and
What
Logic.
show? Oh, Luck and Logic.
I don't know. I really want it to be good for some reason. I don't know what's pushing me to say good. But every time I see this, I'm like, it's your time to shine. Come on, guy. Then I watch it. I'm like, this didn't go the way I wanted.
Yeah, Luck and Logic. I was not impressed by its premiering episode. This is another one that didn't try to explain itself or its world too well before just picking up with its story. As I mentioned in the beginning of season Hangout, this was done by Bushido Road to promote their newest card game called Luck and Logic. And while I do not know how that card game plays, I hope awesomely, because I love the name, like Luck and Logic. It's perfect for a card game. I play Weiss Schwartz, their anime-based card game, and I like it. Bushido Road has only ever produced one original anime, and that was the Detective Milky Holmes thing, which I have not watched, but I have not necessarily heard of a lot of other people watching as well. So I assume that one wasn't awesome in its own respect, and a lot of their other shows were basically like Yu-Gi-Oh! Like we are attempting to play this game, or we can see how this card game was adapted from like a battle-esque mechanic that's going on. They did the Card Fight Vanguard, which I think that one was more like Yu-Gi-Oh! I'd never watched it. I just remember like somebody was giving away promotional goods for it, so like we ended up with like this English DVD of the first episode. And what kind of killed that series really early off with me was in the initial episode, our character is like being told, he's like, oh, how do you play this card game? And the guy's like, well, step one, imagine yourself in another world. And I was like, nope, that's never the first step to playing a card game.
Wait, what game was this?
Card Fight Vanguard or something like that. Like Vanguard is its name, but
don't they have another season coming out right now?
Yeah, like they have stuff all over the place. But Vanguard was the newer game over Weiss Schwartz, so it got brought over to here in the States first. So its popularity probably spiked before Weiss did. But I also found out like St. Louis, for whatever reason, where I reside, is like a hotbed for a lot of that type of gameplay. And while I travel to various other states, I find out that it is not as big as I thought it was because of all the amount of play that I've seen it in card shops around here and stuff like that. But that's not important because then they went on to make another thing called like Future Card Buddy Fight or something, Buddy Kite Future, something like that, which seemed like it was it pandered into more of like a shonen target audience, like just let's get young kids card gaming. And I've never learned the mechanics of that, nor was I that interested, because its art kind of deviated a lot from their traditional Vanguard-like anime style. And then we have this one come out, Luck and Logic, and it goes back into a Vanguard-like anime style. Now, are the mechanics really a lot like Vanguard? Did they just dress it up again with a new sense of balance, or is there a whole new way to play this thing? Is it closer to We Cross, just to bring up the name We Cross, because I don't know how to play that one either, which is not done by Bushido Road so far as I know. But like none of their animes seem to be super popular, yet in my opinion they keep trying. Like, why? I'm not 100% sure. But I really agree. The final fight in this thing, like episode 11, 12, was like the series' only redeeming quality, and I wish they themed the rest of it to be like those two episodes in particular. We really kind of watched the group of logicalists pursue defending their Earth-like world from invading interdimensional logic breaches, and none of that is ever explained. Like, you have this one character who's like, catchphrase is, my logic is telling me things are this way, or something like that.
I hated that guy.
Well,
Well, let me rephrase. I hated the guy at the beginning, but then once I realized what really was with him, I was like, "Oh shit, man." Okay, you're allowed to say that.
but then it kind of it pandered into an area that I thought was really interesting. It seems in this series, logic or thought, it can be dictated by these little green card-looking things, and people refer to their logic, but you never really see it manifested. You do have an evil anime villain near the end of this thing who's literally poisoning people's thoughts. He somehow mass produces this thought and is forcing this idealism onto people through like this trance-jacking medium, they called it. But he's kind of like messing with like, you can acknowledge he's literally, that's how he is injecting this thought into people, and that was kind of cool. And then sometimes characters can go into this like over trance state, like, you know, it's like it's the extra boost power that is going to, it's a double-edged sword. It's kind of like the Yuki Yuna stuff, where if you use this powerful skill, it's going to hurt you. And it hurts you by like scattering all your logic cards. So like every thought that made you up is now gone, and you fall into this like comatose state. And people are able to kind of like recover those pieces of yourself to reassemble your full self. And you can like come out of the coma before you're complete with all your own logic cards that were scattered from you. But, you know, there it got a little ambiguous again. I don't think this is going to matter as much in the card game. I don't know how it pertains to the card game. But the evil anime villain this time around was, I guess, like, to an extent, the god Lucifer. And while that character that you don't like was a medium for him to take on his plot, in the end, he thought that after he, you know, the guy that you don't like stepped back, realized how arrogant he was, and said, that initial thought you had was not wrong. Like, I still agree with that. I just don't agree with your methods. And he like takes this logic card into himself to represent that he still accepts the ideal, but it's like, I somehow I don't get it. Like, for our main character, his name was like Yoichika or something like that. Yomichika, something. One of his cards at the end of the series that wasn't returned was like his card that governs his ability to remember things. So like, he seems like really. He seems like he can't connect with people anymore, and he doesn't really remember people no matter how many times they keep introducing themselves to him. And to me, that was like weird, because it's like, okay, so first these cards were thoughts, and that's all they represented, ideals and like beliefs and crap like that. But now like they can control the mechanic of a person, like their actual brain's ability to remember stuff. Like that's pretty trippy. So like, I wish it really messed with that element of itself a lot more throughout the series instead of just in the last episode. And I think they could have had a lot more going for them if they did express like that whole mechanic instead of just the endless amount of crappy combat throughout the whole 10 first episodes.
Hey, those combats are awesome. I'm selling this show no matter what. I don't care. That's the best show of 2016. I'll finish it later, but best show.
I'll finish it later. Like, I'll have plenty of chance to watch anime when I'm 6 feet under. That is when I'll finish it.
What other title? Kohaku no Pandora.
Oh, yeah.
How did that show ever turn out? That show became too crazy for me, and I was like, what?
You know, aside from its mechanic that it tried to introduce as like an element of over-Yuriism, it was actually kind of decent. You had that whole like super advanced Senecal Island or something like that. That it was really kind of exploring the, I guess, belief of its main protagonist. She kind of had a conundrum later, or like an epiphany. So I'm not sure how I want to describe what she had, but when she first meets that, what her name was Nene, because she's like the Neneko something something. Let me pull up names so I know what to reference. Up here. Yeah, Clarion was the combat android, or actual. So a lot of times in this world, you have full-on robotic androids that. Give me one moment. That is very common in a lot of animes. They were mostly assisting society, because like you kind of had that in like the Jikan no Eve as well, where androids were something that were supposed to benefit to society, and always have a level of like robotic code where you ask certain questions and they have to respond with certain truths irregardless of who's asking. Like they didn't really have any personality. They just kind of operated on some core set of code instruction. I don't know how to describe it.
So they're like NPCs of a video game?
Huh?
Like an NPC of a video game?
Oh.
They just answer.
I'm just having issues. Something's producing sound here and I want to kill it. You know, I know what I have to do. Give me one short moment here. We'll switch to a non-added thing. Okay, so what were you saying? Sorry.
Oh, just saying like an NPC of a video game for this.
Well, yeah, but like usually those are pretty fleshed out with dialogue and stuff. Yeah, I guess some of them do have dialogue, but yeah, like an NPC. And we also find out that it's in like a Ghost in the Shell like future. It's just starting to dabble into something that's predominant in Ghost in the Shell, and that's adapting machinery to human brains. Some people who have lost limbs, we can attach a robotic arm, but what is your brain's proficiency to control a robotic arm? How well can it control something that doesn't necessarily operate like your biological arm? Because we might not be able to like adapt our brains to think like that. So a lot of people suffer a lot of performance penalties using parts that are mechanized. I just think that a lot of people have like random abilities with natural talents, so to speak, to controlling extensions that were not originally theirs. One of them we see is the Nene character, who is the main protagonist of this series. I forget. I think she succumbed to like some kind of fire or something. Like I don't think she was innately super young when she had her accident, which they put her brain, I guess. I don't know if they digitized it or just lopped a biological brain into this like android body. I don't know if they really fleshed that one out. But she is actually not inhibited at all by controlling parts that were not unique to her. I guess her brain is set up in such a way where she can acknowledge such advanced things as though it were second nature to her, and that's just the chemistry of her brain specifically. She comes across this other person, much like herself, who is another. Oh, I guess she is not. See, I thought she was a human as well, but according to an article over here, she is a combat android disguised as a full-body cyborg who our main protagonist is. And that might just be something I never caught on in the series, but apparently she is an actual personality full-on robot who doesn't have to follow the same code as every other commercial droid, so to speak. But she has this thing known as the Pandora device, which the way I can only easily describe it as, do you remember like like there was a TV show, a live action show that America produced a long time ago, and it was simply known as like Chuck or something.
Oh
Do
yeah,
you remember that at all? Like there was
yeah.
this mnemonic thing that they like pooled all of the knowledge of like most human things, and this guy had this like drive, I guess, put in him or something, or he watched the sequence of things and it was somehow encoded into his mind. I never watched the show, so I don't really understand it that well, but
I think it was like some kind of hypnotism with images relating to certain things of the contents of whatever was the FBI, CIA, whatever it was.
mhm.
Whenever he would see an image or something, it would bring up that information.
Yeah, that is similar to the Pandora device in the series. The Pandora device was seemingly fleshed out with knowledges amongst almost everything, even if it was to say sewing or something medical related, like, you know, or cooking or actual proficiency with weapons. And using the program from the Pandora device, Nene could take on a form, or like using like optical camouflage, it would like almost do this magical girl's transformation scene, slap a uniform on her, and she can suddenly excel in one talent. That kind of come back to haunt her. She was saying like this is an ability not unique to myself. I have to rely on someone else to do this. Is this fair for me to have this unreal advantage over people? And she kind of has this breakdown with her willingness to use the Pandora device, saying that she thinks that she has to be self-sustaining or rely on her own talents to bring about the pursuit of her dream, which is world peace. And there's a lot of not conflicting logic or conflicting messages in this series, but it has to deal with like the perspectives of people, because like, you know, people will counter her statement with, well, how would you feel if someone had the ability to save somebody's life, but they didn't save someone's life because they felt that using this ability was like cheating or something? It's like, if you have the power to do something, shouldn't you try to make the world a better place with this power that is solely yours and nobody else's? Like, would you be fine with someone not saving lives if they had the ability to? So it kind of dabbled into a lot of that kind of realm of thought, but at heart it was also still just using the Pandora device and the weird port that they had to access every time that she needed to use it.
Was it called the F port, right?
Huh? No, well, the F port, I think F was supposed to go for finger, much like, if you remember like Star Wars and R2-D2, he always had that like little hacking extension. Like, the finger port was just something that you can put your finger to something, and it was like a protocol. It would exchange information with something. It wasn't like the direct cable in the back of your neck, which was present here, much like Ghost in the Shell. But it was just a way to talk to things. The F port, which I believe F to stand for finger. I don't actually know. And access to the Pandora device was kept in the lower region of Clarion, which would be, you know, in near that area of near that biological area of most women used for
I think we get it.
yeah. Like, I don't know how to censor myself here just to not blur out obscenities, but
Just go beep.
she would have to put her hand, which housed the finger port in her finger, near that general lower region of the other droid to access the Pandora drive, so she could get the programmatic knowledge to overcome the ordeal in front of her. And that was what like the show was kind of mostly about. And I was actually not really liking the initial like episode or two, when she was like just thrusted into this situation where she had to like combat this thing known as Cour or something like that. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but it was just the pinnacle of technology from this one mad scientist. It was like the tactical nuke of the future. That this thing could decimate the Earth, and it was that dangerous. So every organization kind of wants to obtain it. So the mad scientist put a lot of safeguards into keeping her technology hers and nobody else's, which was kind of actually funny in like one of the few other seasons. In the later episodes, like people were attempting to hack into it, and they were like hacking this thing like no one's business. Like there's no real way to quantify what they were doing because this is a fictitious thing, but you know, they try to visualize it with layers of barriers and like the program, like they kind of did this like Evangelion. You remember like when the angel thing, like how they were like it was like into the computer system and it was like trying to take it over, and they had that whole visualization of like the angelification of something or another.
Yeah.
Like I forgot how they always displayed that, but we had like a similar attack barrier thing going on here, and just super layers of protection. And unbelievably, the evil military guy and the aunt of the one character, the Nene character, combine their powers with the military guy not knowing that somebody was assisting his team with hacking, break through all barriers of this viewer thing, only to realize that they never actually were breaking into the Boer's body itself. They were merely, the only thing they had access to was a folder of kind of like Zetai Ryo Iki regions that the main sunflower-esque lion body was like taking in his various escapades throughout the city. He would like just snap that general region, and he had this hidden folder of all of his shots that he had collected, and that's what they broke into and exposed to the world.
He
was like, you never had access to my main body. Like, that is so secure. Are you crazy? Like, yeah, you just hacked my private folder. Good for you. I'm mad, and I'm going to, like, destroy the world now. Because I'm so embarrassed. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't a true comedy. Like, that, it had an element or two of it here and there, but it's kind of hard to describe what it was going for. Like, who would appreciate the story that is that Pandora show? I'm not 100% sure.
Who knows, and we'll never know, maybe.
Like, it was interesting. It dealt with that transhumanism a little bit, but I don't know. It was transhumanism with ideals, with just crazy shenanigans. So I guess that was the what was it they were talking that the maker of that one crazy show like did this one? What was that show he did? That was like
what?
It's a Japanese manga illustrated by this person based on a concept by that person that I can't remember. The Excel Saga. So it was like from his most popular work was like Excel Saga, and like Excel Saga meets Ghost in the Shell, and that's what this is supposedly supposed to be. But it's like, do those things mesh together? Is anyone going to appreciate the story? I don't know. I don't think so, but who knows? Maybe there is someone who was like, that was the most amazing anime ever.
Well, I'm just going to share one more title. I'm really not good into it, and then probably end it. The reason why I'm not going to get into it is probably because if almost everyone was watching or something. Konosuba. If you watch at least the first episode, and if you can get into it, then you're good for the rest of the whole series. But it was a kind of short series. I think got 10 episodes, right?
Yeah, it only had 10.
So I know I was a little disappointed with it being that short, but the show actually turned out really well to me because, like, I read the light novel, and when I was reading the light novel, it irritated me, and I just had to quit. And I don't know if it was just because of how it was translated or just how it was written, but I think it was mostly the translation problem. I just got irritated at this, and I couldn't finish it. So watching this anime finally brought me liking this show again, or this title.
You know, the funny thing to me is this thing, its first episode is a lot different from the rest of its 9. You're kind of met with the initial conflict of how this differentiates itself, how this is kind of like a comedic like satire on that whole like Spirited Away to an RPG world thing, and just how much for like a pure comedic script they were going for. But like when they introduced the character that was Aqua, like no one's introduction, in my opinion, was like as well done. Like they didn't make anything else super immaculate. They didn't point out like all the conflicts in the personal characterization of any of them. But and I think like the gags kind of like died down a lot after the first episode. Like not to say they stopped, just the contradicting quality kind of went away. Like it just seemed like the focus was all in the first episode to me, and then the rest of the show just kind of became the other 9 episodes that were still kind of good, but nothing like the first. That's just my opinion of it, but I do know that Megumin character has like become like a trending character of like everyone just fantasizing over her. There's like art everywhere about Wagawa Megumin.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's because of the
You're kind of muffled there. I didn't hear you at all.
or maybe it was her Chinibyoism.
Well, yeah, but it's like she was like you would think that like some people probably like Aqua a lot from it, but it's just like it seemed like Japan artistic feeds were exploding with the whole Megumin character more so than Aqua, which was kind of funny.
I didn't really see too many of Darkness.
No, not at all. But I think it was just because of her character, how much she probably exemplified Chunibyo, and maybe the character design, maybe other elements of just they just liked her general character more so than the conflict that was supposed to be Aqua.
Maybe
the overly proud, not so intelligent goddess.
She's an idiot. Well, I guess that's it for today. Actually, this went longer than I thought it would. But sorry for running late. I guess I could say vacation stuff kind of threw my schedule out of whack, but we should be back on schedule next week. We'll be doing the spring season of 2016. We'll be talking about the lineup, the starting lineup. So if you want to talk with us about it, be sure to check out our event on the Anime Talk community. And there's a lot of first impressions already being posted out. And I'm going to get started on some too. And we'll see you guys next week. Once again, thank you for watching, and how do you do this? Owen Evans for our cover art. He's working hard right now to get us our spring drawn right now. So please be excited for that. You have anything to say?
None.
All right. Well, hopefully next time we'll target more on the opening and closing, because I want to hear more of that.
Well, I think my only preferred like opening and closing sequences from here, just because this is the last cap that I could, and I didn't have a chance to talk about any other time, was Stride's opening. I actually really did like, not necessarily the art, but the song in particular. Let's see, I think I only grabbed to myself, I think I only got like 3 openings from this current season, or closings respectively. They just 3. I listened to the full version that is the startup to the Erased series, the Boku Machi and I, whatever, just grabbing words from its title. And that one, while it was artistically there, I loved the opening of Boku Machi and of Erased just because of the general theme and how well it goes with that song they used. When you listen to the song, it's like a 2-minute riff or a 2-minute startup of just instrumentals, and then they kind of get to the song and then on. It's like, I don't know how to feel about that. Can I listen to 2 minutes of instrumentals before music just starts up? And it's like a 4-minute song or something like that. But that one was kind of hard to track down because it was a song that existed from a band that they redid just for this anime, I guess. So it's like they sung it a little bit differently than how it was initially released or something. I didn't do my research on that one too much. But what was the other song that I liked? I'll have to reference my iTunes.
I like the ending
Never
to Konosuba. The ending was pretty good in Konosuba.
mind. I don't remember it too well. Like, if I don't, a lot of times, like, music is something kind of big with endings in me, because like sometimes I could just appreciate the animation that went into the closing sequence, which is, half important as the music sometimes. But um, I like to reminisce about songs by listening to the music. So even if the animation was great and I love the visual sequence, if the song's not there, I won't have so much enjoyment just listening to it as it randomly comes across, my car radio or whatever my Bluetooth device is hooked up to. So a lot of times when I pick the music I keep, I will comment on the animation if it just happened to be really great, but mostly I'm just saying, like, here's my favorite music, not that everyone has my tastes.
All right. So, till next week, guys. Johnny.
Jane.